And I wish it could have happened without hurting somebody else. And I think that's my biggest regret. When they said that they would take us out of the house, I denied it. I said, no, never mind. I don't want to push through with this, even though, in the report, they said there were indicators of abuse. And my brother told me he believed me. And he said, I know it's true because it's happened to me too.
We've looked at loads of cases where young people have done some really messed up things, and it's pretty clear that they're totally capable of being violent and cruel. We've also seen plenty of examples of both kids and adults getting into trouble with the law, and it seems like their upbringing and surroundings have a big impact on the kind of life they end up leading and the things they get into. The case of Catherine and Curtis Jones is a perfect example of how these two things can come together. These two siblings were only 12 and 13 when they were caught, and they had endured a significant amount of turmoil growing up. All of that led them to plan out and try to take down the people they saw as their enemies. Welcome to the Crimeful Corner. I'm Eli, and in this video, we are going to delve into the captivating and lesser-known tale of Catherine and Curtis Jones, who made history as the youngest convicted adult murderers. Catherine's exact date of birth remains unknown, but she was born in 1985 to her parents Curtis Jones and Stacy Parks. While it may seem like the start of a beautiful story, the reality was much darker. According to Stacy, she suffered physical abuse from Curtis shortly after they began dating. The abuse continued to worsen over time, culminating in a violent outburst by Curtis while Stacy was pregnant with Catherine, which caused her uterus to tear and led to Catherine's premature birth. In a span of less than a year, the couple welcomed the birth of their second child, Curtis Fairchild Jones, on May 31st, 1986. The family of four projected an image of happiness and close-knit ties, at least in the eyes of their young children. However, unbeknownst to them, Stacy continued to suffer from Curtis's physical abuse, which she kept hidden from the innocent eyes of her children. It is believed that the children may have eventually become aware of the situation. The situation became too much for Stacy to handle, and in 1989, she decided to leave home. However, she couldn't take her young daughter Catherine and toddler son Curtis with her due to her fear that her biracial children would not be accepted by her mother. As a result, she left them in the care of Curtis Sr. At the time, Stacy was convinced that leaving was in the best interest of her children. Little did she know, the harsh reality would prove her wrong. But after 5 years, Stacy got a feeling that something was off with her kids. During that time, Curtis had one of his male relatives move in with him and the kids. Initially, this situation may not appear to be a big deal. After all, it is common for family members to live with one another for various reasons at different stages of life, whether for financial or other purposes. However, the issue with this specific relative, which went unnoticed or was deliberately disregarded, is that he possessed a very troubling criminal record. This anonymous relative was not only incarcerated for robbery, but he also had a history as a registered sex offender. What's even more mind-boggling is that he was caught for sexually assaulting his girlfriend's 14-year-old daughter in 1993, which was merely a year before skepticism began to surface. In 1994, during a holiday visit to their mother's home in Kansas, Curtis disclosed to Stacy that he had been subjected to abuse by this person. And later, it was revealed that Catherine had also been a victim of the same abuse. But it remains uncertain whether she had spoken up about it during that holiday visit. After Curtis's initial disclosures, authorities launched an investigation into the matter. However, the investigation was halted after young Curtis altered his statements, claiming that he had lied initially, likely under duress or intimidation. This could be seen as the pivotal error that led to the unraveling of events. If only Curtis, his parents, or the authorities had acted differently, the outcome could have been significantly different from what actually happened. But of course, the situation didn't improve, and a colossal tragedy was looming on the horizon. Curtis and Catherine were forced to endure a relentless ordeal of physical and sexual abuse, with only brief moments of speaking out and seeking justice. Records revealed that in 1996, 2 years after the initial reports of the abuse, another case was opened concerning the Jones children. This investigation focused on Curtis, who had reportedly sustained injuries to his eye, which had become swollen and bruised. An investigation was initiated a few months prior to the murder in September of 1998, this time concerning Catherine. The 13-year-old had apparently run away from home, prompting her teacher to file a report expressing concern for her safety. The reports highlighted fears that Catherine was being sexually exploited, leading to an investigation into the matter. While there was some evidence indicating abuse, the investigation was cut short. Similar to the previous ones, Catherine had previously tried to tell her father about the abuse, but he didn't believe her and instead sided with the relative. The investigations that began into the abuse allegations were too little too late, as Curtis Sr. had already intimidated Catherine into lying and denying that the abuse had ever occurred. Investigators apparently didn't look into the situation as much as some folks think they should have. However, they did apparently tell Curtis Sr. that his relative living with them was bad news due to his criminal past and the threat he posed to the kids. And although investigations appear to be avoided in the Jones family, things continued to go wrong within their home. This sick and twisted relative continued to sexually exploit both Curtis and Catherine, and it was almost as if their dad and his then new girlfriend Nicole Spites couldn't care less about what was happening right under their noses. The siblings found solace and support in each other, with Catherine confiding in Curtis that he was the only one who believed her accusations of sexual abuse against their relative. He emphasized with her as he too had been a victim of abuse. Catherine reached a breaking point when, a few days after the investigation was closed, she was taking a shower, and the family member barged into the bathroom. He opened the shower curtains and proceeded to leaving Catherine terrified and sobbing in fear until he was done. After finishing his disgusting act, he added insult to injury by leaving behind 50 cents on the toilet seat for her. Following the bathroom incident, Catherine wrote in her diary expressing her anger and her frustration that her and her brother's pleas for help were being ignored by their father and his girlfriend. She went as far as to write that she wanted to kill everyone involved in the abuse, including their abuser, as well as their father and his girlfriend, whom she felt deserved to die for their inaction. Together, the siblings began devising a plan to eliminate their abuser and ensure that this kind of tragedy would never happen again. On January 6, 1999, the siblings' sinister plot was set in motion. With their father out of the house and their abuser expected to return later that evening, the children were left alone with Nicole. The siblings were aiming to encounter minimal resistance by taking out one person at a time with no one else in the house. And so, the two began their mission. As 29-year-old Sonia Nicole Spites worked on a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle at the dining table, Curtis and Catherine retrieved their father's 9mm semi-automatic pistol as their weapon of choice. Catherine took the first shot, which hit Nicole in the stomach. However, she lost her grip on the gun due to the recoil of the shot. In a sudden burst of violence, Curtis picked up the gun and fired at Nicole in her surroundings with no mercy. A total of 9 shots were fired, 4 of which struck Nicole and ultimately led to her death. After the chaos subsided, Curtis was left to confront the harsh reality that he had taken another person's life, causing him to spiral into a state of panic and fear. In an interview, Catherine stated, "This wasn't just some fantasy in our heads anymore, it was real." Despite the shock of what they had just done, Catherine took charge of the situation and tried to console her brother, and together they began to make an effort to clean up the scene. As they dragged Nicole's body away from the dining room, Catherine and Curtis attempted to eliminate any trace of their gruesome crime scene, resorting to bleach to clean up the bloodstains. Next, they staged the scene to make it look like a robbery had taken place before fleeing their home. Now, as they left, they took a brief stop to their neighbors to explain to them that the gun was fired by accident. Now remember, earlier they tried to clean up the crime scene with bleach. Then they tried to make it seem like a robbery occurred within the house. And now they're speaking to their neighbor, explaining to them that they fired the gun by accident. Mind you, these are kids, so they're doing their absolute best to try to cover up their tracks. And after they speak to the neighbor, they go run and hide in the woods nearby in a full-blown state of panic and anxiety. Now, it's not clear who initially alerted the police about Nicole's death, but it was almost likely either the neighbors that Curtis and Catherine talked to or their father, Curtis Sr., who found Nicole's body and called the cops. Either way, it could be argued that this was the only inquiry into the events at the Jones household that produced any tangible outcomes. The information from witness reports led the police on a hunt for the culprits of the murder. Eventually, Curtis and Catherine were discovered on the morning of January 7th, 1999, huddled in the woods near their home. The weight of reality and the repercussions of their deeds loomed heavily over them. Being only 12 and 13 years old, Curtis and Catherine faced charges as adults for the severe crime of first-degree murder. While a life sentence seemed inevitable, their youth worked in their favor as prosecutors agreed to a plea deal for second-degree murder, carrying a sentence of 18 years and probation for life. The deal offered to Curtis and Catherine also meant that there would be no proper trial with witnesses or evidence. Despite their young age, inexperience, and fear, the children accepted the agreement without speaking up about the true reasons for their heinous actions. Maybe they anticipated being met with disbelief, as they had experienced in previous situations. As the investigation unfolded, a popular belief emerged that Curtis and Catherine had intentionally killed Nicole, motivated by their resentment towards her and their fear that her involvement would alter their family dynamic with their mother. This assumption was widely adopted by the media and other bystanders who perceived the siblings' actions as a self-centered and unfeeling attempt to safeguard their own benefits regardless of the consequences. In a statement that underscored the gravity of Curtis and Catherine's silence, Alan Landman, Curtis's attorney, commented, "It's almost like they had a pact of silence, and for some reason, they thought that would help them." He went on to express the regret that he was not made aware of the abuse during the trial, noting that this knowledge could have significantly improved the chances of securing a better sentence for the siblings. Mayor Todd Goodyear, an official at the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, held a firm belief that the actions committed by Curtis and Catherine were in no way excusable. To him, it was not enough to simply blame the abuse they suffered. As he put it, "There are a lot of people who have been abused and didn't do something like this. At some point, you have to take responsibility for your actions." As they were sentenced in August of 1999 at the young ages of 13 and 14, Curtis and Catherine received a punishment of 18 years in prison with a lifetime of probation to follow. Despite the severity of their crimes, the siblings seemed to lead uneventful prison lives for the majority of their first decade behind bars. But in a twist of fate, Hurricane Francis descended upon the juvenile detention center where Curtis was being held in 2004, granting him a brief taste of freedom. At the age of 19, Curtis and a group of fellow teens took advantage of the chaos to make their escape, but their rebellion was short-lived as they were recaptured within 24 hours. As a consequence, Curtis's sentence was extended by an additional 318 days. In a stunning revelation during an interview with Florida Today newspaper in 2009, Catherine disclosed that her and her brother's motive for murder was driven by their sexual relationship with the relative and the frustrations that resulted from it. Although she expressed regret for taking Nicole's life, Catherine also revealed a sense of relief she felt after being sentenced to prison.
At one point I was just so happy to be away, and I know that sounds really, really messed up, but there was just some point where I was just away from all that, and I was by myself, and I was safe.
In a heartwarming turn of events, Ramus Fleming, a U.S. Navy senior, was moved by Catherine's story after reading a 2009 article. He decided to write to her, and the two began a pen-pal relationship. Over time, their connection grew, and they fell in love through their letters. In November 2013, they were married in the Hernando Correctional Institutional Chapel, and at the time of their marriage, Catherine was 28 years old. As Catherine's release from prison approached, Ramus began making significant changes to his life in order to better support his wife's transition back into society. He even retired from his position as a naval officer to dedicate more time to guiding her through the challenges of life outside prison. The world had drastically changed since Catherine was last free at the age of 13, and Ramus wanted to ensure that she had all the support she needed to navigate her new reality. After serving the bulk of their sentence, Catherine and Curtis were finally released from prison. With ages of 30 and 29 respectively, Curtis and Catherine were both released from prison. Curtis departed as an ordained Christian minister, while Catherine pursued a more conventional lifestyle. Although her marriage to Ramus didn't last, she remained positive, feeling blessed by her many opportunities, including the Presidential Academic Scholarship for school, which she can keep as long as she maintains a 3.75 GPA. In their quest for redemption, both Catherine and Curtis are taking steps to acclimate to the technological and social changes that occurred during their 16-year imprisonment, all while avoiding any probation violations. Furthermore, Catherine is actively involved in advocating for fair sentencing of young offenders. As of now, their efforts seem to be progressing without issue. Thank you for tuning into the Crimeful Corner. That was the case of Catherine and Curtis Jones. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to help support and grow the channel. And I'll catch you in the next one.